You
I
ever have
told
one of
you
those
this was
mornings where the
unacceptable.
world
How could
just
you be so
flips upside
irresponsible?
down
Look at
before
this
you've even had
mess.
your first cup
Don't
of
blame
coffee?
this on me. I am doing the best
Yeah,
I
that was
can right
me.
now.
You
October.
cannot park that moving truck
Mist
here. It is
still
a
hanging
clear
low
violation
over
of the
these
homeowner's
expensive
agreement.
lawns.
We're just
Just
trying
to
in,
move a
ma'am.
table
Give us a
lamp
break.
into my new place at
No, stop.
47
Let go of
Meadowbrook
me.
Lane,
Ma'am,
thinking
you are
maybe,
under arrest. Get in the
just
vehicle
maybe, I'd
now.
finally found a little peace. I'd spent years hoping for this, quiet. Just the soft buzz of a leaf blower down the block, somebody's golden retriever trying to take out a squirrel, and that feeling you get when money's bought every blade of grass around you. I thought I was buying into peace. I didn't know I was stepping into a war. So picture this. I'm wrestling this lamp through my front door, hands in plain sight, and then somewhere not far off, a voice cuts through the calm. Not just any voice either. I mean sharp, clipped like a knife through butter. 911. What's your emergency? But the response, that's what cracked the whole thing open. Yes, there's an armed home invasion in progress at 47 Meadowbrook Lane. Multiple suspects with weapons threatening residents. You ever been so stunned you laugh out loud? That was me. I'm the only one in my driveway sweating over a lamp while somebody's calling in the cavalry and spinning a story wild enough to make Netflix jealous. I didn't know her name yet, but later I'd find out that voice belonged to Magnolia Dresden, and believe me, nobody does panic quite like her. It sounded real enough to fool anybody who wasn't standing in my shoes seeing how absurd it was. And as the dispatcher's voice came through, "Ma'am, officers are en route. Are you in immediate danger?" I could almost hear her brain short-circuiting. Something about her call just wasn't adding up, and I think the dispatcher knew it even over the phone. But Magnolia, she doubled down. These people are criminals. They're using fake documents to steal property. Government vehicles, federal plates. This is organized crime. I mean, wow. Here's me in faded jeans and a hoodie trying to maneuver around some bushes without crushing the mums. You know what I mean? And there she is, somewhere in the shadows, convincing 911 that I'm the opening act of a SWAT raid. First police cruiser comes sliding around the corner, lights bouncing off the windows, sirens just a whisper behind the engines, then another and another, until I've got 5 cruisers painting my new front yard red and blue. Radios, crackling voices clipped and official, all for one guy with a moving truck. Somebody really wanted a show. Lead officer steps out that careful, deliberate way they teach you, in training hand near his sidearm, but not drawn. I'd seen that look before back in my federal days. He calls out, "Sir, step away from the vehicle with your hands visible." I keep it slow, steady. "Officer, I'm the homeowner. Documentation's in my back pocket. No sudden moves, no attitude." After 15 years working with federal teams, you learn help them do their job. Everybody goes home happy. And that's when Magnolia Dresden decides to make her entrance. If you've never seen a fuchsia pink power suit explode out of a white Cadillac Escalade, you're missing a sight. She storms out, blonde hair that's probably engineered to withstand a hurricane, nails done up so perfect. They flash in the sun like little daggers. "Officers, thank God you're here. This man is trespassing with forged federal documents." I could see the lead officer's face shift from potential threat to what is going on here real quick. He checks my paperwork, settlement documents from the Treasury Department, all the official seals, even the whistleblower credentials that almost nobody ever sees outside of DC hearings. He's careful, methodical, holds up the papers to the light like he's seen more than a few scams in his time. "Ma'am, these appear to be legitimate federal documents. Treasury letterhead, official seals, whistleblower credentials." You should have seen Magnolia's face. She cycled through colors, pink, red, purple, like she was auditioning for a weather map. Fake. All fake. I run this community. 8 years. Nobody moves here without my approval. And that's when it hit me. I had just moved into a place where some folks actually believed they owned other people's property rights. Magnolia was looking at me like I just walked off with her crown jewels when all I'd done was buy a house through a federal asset recovery settlement. Let me back up a sec. This wasn't just about a house. This was about control, about power. the kind that gets exercised behind closed doors with official-looking stationery and a taste for intimidation. I watched the officers handle the scene with the kind of patience you only get from years of putting up with suburban drama. One cop finally says, "These documents appear completely legitimate, ma'am. The house was purchased through a federal asset recovery settlement." That word settlement, it might as well have been a slap. Magnolia's voice cracked. "What settlement? Who do you think you are?" I could see her curiosity clawing at her. "After what happened in Washington, I needed somewhere quiet," I said, letting just enough slip to keep her guessing. She didn't like that at all. Her eyes narrowed jaw set, and the rest of the officers looked like they'd rather be just about anywhere else than mediating a drama queen's meltdown. That's when the real circus started. A silver Mercedes pulls up, then a black BMW, another car I couldn't quite make out. 7 people get out moving together like a business strike team. Navy polo shirts, Willowbrook HOA boards stitched across the chest in gold. They swarm up block my driveway like they're staging a coup. Leading the pack is a guy who introduces himself as Thornton Blackidge HOA attorney. Suit so sharp you could shave with it, briefcase that probably cost more than my first car. He sets up shop next to Magnolia and starts pulling out incorporation documents like they're the Dead Sea Scrolls. And you know what, to most folks, those papers would have looked legit. But I'd spent 15 years catching document fraud for the government. You start to see things like how these so-called 1987 incorporation documents were printed in Calibri font, which didn't exist until 2004. Amateurs. I say, officer, these papers are less than 20 years old, not 37. Calibri wasn't even a thing when they claim this was filed. The cop's eyebrows go up. Magnolia's face goes through another set of color changes. She starts ranting about community standards, how they supersede individual property rights, and that they can place liens, impose fines, force a sale. All the classic HOA stuff, but with the volume cranked way up. That's when Walter Piton wanders over. 78 years old, cardigan, kind eyes, the sort of guy who's seen everything and learned how to spot a liar at 100 yards. "Magnolia, you're embarrassing yourself again. That house was never part of any HOA. I've got 40 years of documentation says so." Magnolia tries to shut him down. "Mr. Piton, please return to your property." Walter just smiles. "You start harassing my neighbors with fake claims that concerns me plenty." He leans over and says, "Son, I've got documentation'll make their fantasy paperwork look like something off a cereal box. Come by when they're done with their theater." Magnolia threatens him, literally threatens a 78-year-old man about violating Section 12 of our bylaws, and I feel something cold in my chest. I've seen bullies before. Threatening old folks is where I usually draw the line. Walter just laughs. "Magnolia, I was reviewing property law before you were born. Your made-up rules don't scare me." She turns back to me, voice shaking, and says, "You have 24 hours. Submit to HOA authority or face the consequences." I ask, "What consequences?" She smiles like a shark and stalks off, making a phone call loud enough for me to catch need immediate response. Yes. Armed. 47. Meadowbrook. Walter shakes his head. She's calling it in. She did the same thing to the Johnson family 2 years back. They lasted 3 weeks before selling at a loss. I glance at the concealed carry permit in my wallet, completely legal, and realize Magnolia probably clocked the bulge under my shirt. She was about to weaponize my own safety precautions against me. "Walter, do me a favor, start recording with your phone." The police wrap things up, finish their paperwork, and leave. The morning mist burns off, and suddenly the neighborhood looks normal again. But I know better now. If you've ever had a neighbor call the cops on you for no reason just because they didn't like you, you know what I mean? But this was just the beginning. The next move was mine. You'd think after all that drama on the driveway The neighborhood would go back to its usual suburban routines, right? But nah, around here the quiet was just a thin layer over something rotten, and it didn't take long for me to spot the cracks. I spent the next hour hauling boxes and watching the street, learning more in 60 minutes than most folks catch in a year. Every house had at least 2 cameras pointed at the road.
I told you this was
The
unacceptable.
neighbors
How
who
could you be
walked
so
their dogs seemed
irresponsible?
to
Look at
follow
this
routes
mess.
that kept
Don't
them
blame
away
this
from
on me.
Magnolia's
I am
place.
doing the best I can
Or
right
maybe
now.
they just
You
lingered a
cannot
little
park
too
that
long
moving
in
truck
front
here.
of
It
certain
is a
windows.
clear violation of the homeowner's
Curtains
agreement.
twitched every
We're just
time I
trying to
so
move
much
in,
as
ma'am.
stepped
Give
off
us a
my
break.
porch. It was like living in a
No, stop.
fishbowl
Let go
built
of
by the
me.
CIA.
Ma'am,
3
you are
calls
under
came in
arrest.
from
Get in
numbers
the
I
vehicle
recognized,
now.
federal contacts checking on my status, making sure the relocation
Anh xem anh đã làm
protocols
gì
were
đi?
still working.
Tất cả là tại
I let
anh mà
him go
ra.
to voicemail.
Cô nói gì vậy?
I wanted a better
Cô mới
read
là
on
người
what
gây
I'd
ra chuyện
walked
này.
into before bringing in the cavalry. The last thing I wanted was to make trouble bigger than it needed to be. By noon, most of the furniture was in place. I finally had a second to breathe, so I started reviewing the property docs that came with my purchase. The house at 47 Meadowbrook Lane, my castle, so to speak, had actually been seized from a pharmaceutical exec. Turns out the guy was knee-deep in an opioid racket laundering cash through real estate deals. Federal auction gave me a shot at buying something solid, a place to rebuild with the settlement money that pretty much upended my life 3 years back. But here's the kicker. As I'm stacking boxes in the basement, I stumble on a hidden panel in the wall. Inside files. Lots of them. The previous owner had been investigating the HOA before he got nailed documenting weird financial patterns. Homes sold way below market, families squeezed by mysterious emergency fees until they caved and sold to pre-selected buyers. There were meeting tapes, bank statements, emails, even lists of offshore accounts. Let me tell you, I've seen my share of corporate crime, but this was systematic. It was money laundering, plain and simple, running right under everyone's nose, wearing the mask of community management. That night, 11:30 p.m., my phone rings. Unknown number. Most folks would let it slide, but not me. Middle of the night calls either mean trouble's coming or it's already here. I answer, Mr. Steele, it's Magnolia. Her voice is sweet, fake sweet, like honey laced with arsenic. I wanted to give you one more chance to reconsider. I know you're new to neighborhood living, might not understand how things work here. I'm scrolling through county records on my laptop as she's talking. Oh, I understand just fine. You're running a protection racket dressed up as community improvement. Silence. Long, heavy silence. Then that voice again, but colder. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Ask the Martinez family. Ask the Hendersons. Ask anyone who's challenged me. She lets that sit for a second, real old-school villain vibes. Is that a threat, Magnolia, I ask? It's a promise, Mr. Steele. Join the HOA or find somewhere else to live. Those are your only options. She hangs up. I just stare at my phone. She thought she was in charge, but all she'd done was put herself square in my crosshairs. The next morning, I get my first taste of her enforcement protocols. There's a county inspector's truck in my driveway and a guy with a clipboard looking at my dock like it's the Rosetta Stone. His name tag says Carl Henderson. He's apologetic, keeps looking over his shoulder like he doesn't want to be here either. The HOA filed complaints about unauthorized modifications and environmental violations. Carl spends 2 hours measuring, photographing, poking around. Finally, he comes up to me, scratching his head. Mr. Steele, I can't find anything wrong with your dock. Permits are all valid. Construction is solid, nothing out of line. Not sure why the HOA thinks they've got authority over county-regulated structures. Me neither, Carl. No sooner does Carl leave than Walter shows up at my back door, envelope in hand, thick enough to use as a doorstop. Told you I had documentation. Come on, let's spread this out. We cover my kitchen table with property surveys from 1967 old plats, municipal filings. HOA and corporation docs from the county, not from 1987 like Magnolia claims, but from 2011. The timeline's all wrong. Walter lays it out. The HOA wasn't about helping neighbors. It was built to funnel money to create crises and push families out, then buy up their homes for a song and resell them. The Martinez family lost their house to a $15,000 assessment for emergency improvements that never happened. The Hendersons got squeezed over playground equipment. 3 other families bailed rather than fight the legal machine. And the money, $2.3 million, collected for community improvement. Road repairs, park upgrades, security cameras, none of it real. The funds disappeared into P.O. boxes and offshore accounts. Walter leans back, eyes tired but sharp. I've been waiting for somebody who could fight back, someone with the skills. I give him a look. Why me? He grins. You saw forged documents in 5 minutes. You act like you've dealt with real criminals. Your phone's been buzzing with blocked numbers. Most people don't get that when they move in. He's right. I'd spent years taking down fraudsters. My last big case blew up a $47 million defense contractor scam. 43 indictments, a whistleblower settlement that got me this house, and more trouble than I bargained for. The skills don't go away. I hadn't planned to use them again. But sometimes the fight finds you. So I pull out my secure phone and start making calls. First up, Agent Martinez, FBI Economic Crimes Unit. I lay out what I've found, ask for a preliminary look into interstate fraud involving HOA schemes. Then I call my friends at Treasury, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Team. The offshore accounts Walter uncovered match patterns they've seen before. Finally, I ring up a federal prosecutor, because nothing makes a bully sweat like the words RICO investigation. When federal law steps in, the rules change. Agent Martinez calls back within 2 hours. You've stumbled onto something bigger than you think. We're seeing similar patterns in 12 communities across 3 states. This isn't just a neighborhood problem. Suddenly, all Magnolia's swagger, her threats, her paperwork, it all looks tiny. She'd called 911 on me over a table lamp. She didn't realize she was poking a bear with teeth sharp enough to chew up her entire criminal enterprise. Walter, watching all this, just grins. Son, I think Magnolia's about to learn what real authority looks like. And I start to understand why the last owner had been digging so deep. This was never about paint colors or landscaping. It was about organized crime hiding behind fake rules. Then the Treasury call comes in. Preliminary analysis matches ongoing federal cases for money laundering networks. Suddenly, I'm not fighting alone. This neighborhood war is about to go federal. 3 days later, the showdown's set for the community meeting. Magnolia doesn't even know it yet, but she's about to lose everything she's built. You ever watch a con artist get exposed in front of a room full of their victims? That was the moment I was waiting for. Friday rolls around, and the energy on Meadowbrook Lane is weird. The whole neighborhood's got that tension like a thunderstorm about to hit, but no one's willing to close their windows just yet. Magnolia had sent out these glossy official notices, HOA letterhead, big red mandatory stamped across the top, inviting all 47 households to the Willowbrook Community Center at 7:00 p.m. sharp. I show up 15 minutes early, not to get a good seat. No, I wanted to watch them set the stage. Magnolia and her board set up at a long table like some high court Thornton Blackage. On her right, the rest of the board in matching navy polos, all stiff and nervous. Magnolia's got that look on her face, tight smile eyes scanning every arrival like she's running background checks on the spot. A projector's humming away in the corner, slides already lined up packets at each seat, little bottles of water like we're at a corporate retreat. Folks come in, slow heads down, some families looking like they'd rather be at the dentist. The room's mostly quiet, but there's a vibe, neighbors whispering, side-eyeing each other, every little cough echoing too loud. Walter arrives last as always, steady, calm, nodding at people he's known for decades. I catch his eye and he gives me a small nod, like, "You ready?" I was. Magnolia stands up, taps the mic. Her voice comes out smooth, well-practiced. She's given this speech before. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending. We're here to address a grave security threat to our community values and property standards." She clicks through a bunch of slides: community standards, property values, why compliance matters, charts and numbers, lots of words like protect, preserve, safeguard. It all sounds important until you realize it's smoke and mirrors. Then she drops my name. Well, not my name, but this individual, and points straight at me. This individual has moved into our neighborhood, using fraudulent federal documents, refuses to acknowledge HOA authority, and represents a direct threat to everything we've built together. I feel the room tense. A few folks nod along, but others look confused, especially the old-timers. She keeps going. He claims federal protection for what appears to be criminal activity, threatens our property values, refuses to comply with established community standards. That's when Thornton stands up, all legal gravitas, and starts spouting about incorporation documents, municipal recognition community covenants. It's all designed to sound ironclad until you actually look close. I let them finish, then stand. Thornton, would you mind showing everyone those HOA incorporation documents you presented to the police? Thornton doesn't want to, but Magnolia is giving him daggers, so he connects his laptop to the projector. Up goes the official document, big date 1987, legal signatures, stamps,
I told you this was
looks
unacceptable.
bulletproof.
How could you be so
But I walk up
irresponsible?
tablet
Look
in
at this
hand and
mess.
say, everyone
Don't
see
blame
that
this on me.
1987.
I am doing the best I
Supposedly
can
these
right
papers
now.
are 37
You
years
cannot
old.
park that moving
But see
truck
this
here.
font,
It is
I
a
zoom
clear
in
violation
slight
of the
to a
homeowners agreement.
side-by-side comparison.
We're just trying to move in, ma'am.
That's Calibri.
Give us a break.
It wasn't even invented
No,
until
stop. Let go of me.
2004. What you're
Ma'am,
looking at
you
is
are
less
under
than
arrest.
20 years
Get in the
old,
vehicle
not
now.
37. It's a sophisticated forgery. You could hear a pin drop. The room shifts.
Đã là tại anh mà
People
ra.
lean in
Cô
murmuring.
nói gì vậy?
Magnolia
Cô mới
jumps
là
in
người
voice
gây
a
ra
little
chuyện này.
shaky now. Those documents are completely legitimate. We have municipal recognition. I switch to the next slide on my tablet. Here's the original 1967 Federal Land Survey. Here's the city clerk's records. No HOA authority over these properties, no right to levy fines or take control. That's when the mood changes for good. Walter stands up calm as you please. $2.3 million collected over 8 years for community improvements. Not a dollar spent on actual improvements. Not a single road repaired. No new park, no new cameras. Just money gone. People start talking over each other. What about our drainage project? You fined us for nothing. We paid for lights. Where are the lights? Magnolia tries to regain control, but her voice is paper thin now. I bring up the last slide, bank records. The money went through Delaware shell companies to offshore accounts. This wasn't about protecting the community. It was about lining a few pockets. Parents start calculating how much they've lost. Elderly folks are shaking their heads, remembering friends who moved out in tears. Mary Hutchinson, mom of 2, stands up, voice trembling but strong. Magnolia, we paid you $8,000 last year for an emergency. Where did that go? Magnolia mutters something about planning phase. The room explodes. Everybody's got a story. The community meeting, which started out as a show of force, turns into a reckoning. Walter finally says, maybe it's time to call the authorities for a criminal investigation. I check my phone. That won't be necessary. Federal agents are already here. Right on cue, the doors open. In walk Agent Martinez and 3 other feds, credentials out. The room freezes. Ladies and gentlemen, Martinez says, we're with the FBI Economic Crimes Unit investigating interstate fraud involving homeowners associations. Your cooperation is appreciated. Magnolia stands up, tries to play the victim. This is harassment. He's fabricating all this, but Martinez shuts her down. We've been investigating for 6 months. Mr. Steele's documentation confirmed what we already suspected. The feds start handing out forms, explaining how to report losses, how to recover what was stolen. Thornton's already packing his briefcase, trying to whisper to the agents offering to cooperate for leniency. Magnolia sits down, pale as a ghost, staring at nothing. That night, neighbors leave as witnesses, not supporters. People are crying, hugging, making plans to meet up and finally talk about what's really been going on. But the real show, man, that's just getting started. Next morning, I'm having coffee when 5 black SUVs roll up. Federal agents everywhere. They search Magnolia's house, Thornton's law office, and 3 other board members' homes. Neighbors line the street watching like it's the 4th of July parade. Magnolia is arrested trying to load suitcases in her Escalade. Thornton gets picked up at his office right in the middle of deleting files. By noon, the entire HOA leadership is in custody. News trucks show up, and within hours, the story's on every local channel. Suburban HOA busted for multi-million-dollar fraud. Agent Martinez knocks on my door. Mr. Steele, we're seeing the same pattern in 12 communities across 3 states. Magnolia was the coordinator. We estimate over $15 million stolen. Let that settle in $15 million just from fake fines, assessments, and intimidation, all under the noses of folks who just wanted to mow their lawns in peace. And then justice. After the raids, Meadowbrook Lane was never the same. Magnolia's house, once the fortress of her so-called authority, sat dark for days. Federal agents going in and out with boxes, computers, old bank ledgers, you name it. The news vans didn't leave for almost a week. Thornton, who always strutted around like the king's lawyer, was seen only once, head down, hands cuffed, muttering as they walked him to the car. The neighborhood had this stunned silence, like everyone was waiting for the next shoe to drop. Folks who'd barely waved at each other in years started showing up on porches, sharing coffee and stories, piecing together how deep the fraud had run. Turns out Magnolia's reach had been everywhere. Special assessments here, emergency repairs there, garden gnomes, ticketed basketball hoops vanished overnight, even kids' bikes cited for decorative noncompliance. People started to laugh about it, just a little like laughter was the only way to process the years they'd spent living under her thumb. A couple weeks after the arrests, Agent Martinez calls. "Mr. Steele, we've confirmed something pretty remarkable about your property and the street itself. Your house sits on the original 1967 federal land grant. The road was designated as private infrastructure under federal oversight. The HOA never had any authority here." I let that sink in. So what does that mean? It means you own the road legally as part of your asset forfeiture purchase. You set the rules. Magnolia and her board. They never had the right to collect a dime from you or any other house on this street. There's a moment, just a beat, where I want to laugh, but all I can do is shake my head. Magnolia tried to run me out of the neighborhood she thought she controlled, and I ended up owning the very road she used to lord over everyone. Implementing the change took some work. Electronic gates went up at both ends of the lane. Residents got access cards. Non-residents paid a $5 daily fee for parking or extended visits. Nothing major, just enough to keep things running smooth and honest. Every dollar collected went to a transparent road maintenance fund managed by a third-party accountant, all records open to public review. No more shadowy improvements, no more money vanishing into thin air. The change was instant. Visitor fees alone brought in nearly $50,000 a year, enough to repave the road, upgrade the streetlights, and even start a scholarship program for neighborhood kids. Folks who used to pay emergency assessments now watched their kids play on safe, well-lit streets and saw where every penny went. Magnolia's house. The bank foreclosed on it during the trial. The new volunteer-run neighborhood association, totally separate from the old corrupt crew, bought it at auction and turned it into a community transparency center. All records, every budget and expenditure right there for anyone to read. They called it Transparency Hall. The old meeting room became a space for potlucks, tutoring, even movie nights. Magnolia's legacy had become a monument to exactly what she tried to prevent. Federal prosecution moved fast, all things considered. Magnolia got 12 years in prison and $500,000 in restitution to homeowners. Thornton got 6 years and lost his law license. The other board members went down for anywhere from 3 to 8 years, depending on how deep they were. The government seized almost $3 million from shell companies and offshore accounts. That money went straight back to victims, over 600 families across 3 states. It wasn't everything, but it was justice, and it was real. 6 months later, property values jumped nearly a quarter, 23% in just 2 quarters. New families started moving in, drawn by the security, the sense of community, the knowledge that no one person could ever lord over them again. The new association ran on transparency. Elected officers, open records, quarterly town halls. Satisfaction shot up. You could feel it in the air, people smiling, letting their kids bike down the street, sharing real conversation. The best day. That was the neighborhood barbecue 1 year to the day after Magnolia's 911 call. 45 out of 47 families showed up. We grilled burgers, swapped stories about the old days. Walter telling how Magnolia once fined him for irregular mailbox paint. Mary Hutchinson joking about the time her garden flamingos got a formal warning. Folks laughed till they cried, the kind of laughter that only comes when you realize the fear is gone for good. At some point, Mary found me. She put her hand on my shoulder and said, "You saved our neighborhood." For the first time, I really believed it. But the story doesn't end there. 6 months after the trial, I get a letter. Federal prison stamp, Magnolia's unmistakable handwriting. 3 pages of her signature scrawl critiquing my toll booth system, excessive wait times during rush hour, suggesting improved visitor scheduling, even a little hand-drawn map with optimal traffic flow. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. There she was, still trying to run things from inside her cell. I pinned the letter up in my garage right next to the deed. Sometimes you need a reminder that some people never change. The new president of our association started Transparency Tuesdays once a month. Anyone could look up any receipt, invoice, contract from the past 20 years. First session, we found out Magnolia paid her cousin $8,000 for a speed bump feasibility study. The cousin ran a landscaping business in Delaware. Not a single speed bump was ever built. The ripple effect was huge. News stories, documentaries, even a production company sniffing around wanted to turn our neighborhood saga into a
Don't blame
movie.
this on me. I am
The
doing
only
the
thing
best
I
I
asked
can
no
right now.
royalties for
You
Magnolia.
cannot park that moving truck
I'll be
here. It is
damned
a
if her
clear
crimes
violation
become
of
her
the
pension
homeowner's
plan.
agreement.
Visitor
trying to
fees
move in,
kept
ma'am.
piling
Give
up
us a
enough
break.
to expand the
No,
scholarship
stop.
program.
Let go of me.
2 Willowbrook students
you are
went to
under
college
arrest.
that
Get
year
in the
paid
vehicle
for by
now.
guests who used to grumble about HOA fines but now smiled knowing their $5 actually did some good. 2 weeks ago, another letter shows up Magnolia
Cô mới là
again.
người gây ra chuyện
This
này.
time it's a full business plan for correctional community management complete with org charts, revenue projections, and a newsletter she runs called Community Standards and Correctional Environments. The warden, according to Agent Martinez, says she's become the de facto HOA president of the prison, filed complaints about unapproved recreational activities and inefficient visitor parking. Some people never learn right. Every day the old board members drive over my road past a new bronze plaque at the entrance, Meadowbrook Private Drive, established 1967, recovered 2024. A reminder for everyone, truth wins, documentation matters, and justice can take the long way, but it never stops moving. Magnolia's fuchsia pink blazer is gone, replaced by federal prison orange. She spends her days writing procedures for property she'll never see again. The neighborhood she once ruled is thriving, folks free to live their lives, kids running wild barbecues in full swing. And every morning when I step outside, breathe that clean air and hear laughter echo down the street, I know one thing: sometimes justice comes rolling up in a moving truck. Sometimes it's a slow burn, but it always finds its way home. 3 years out from that wild first day, you wouldn't even recognize Meadowbrook Lane. The change runs deeper than new pavement and honest accounting. It's in the way folks look at each other, how neighbors wave from their porches, the sound of kids laughing as they race down the street on scooters nobody would dare sight anymore. Even the old-timers, the ones who survived Magnolia's reign, they carry themselves a little lighter. Now you can see it in Walter's eyes every time we sit down for coffee. You want to talk about ripple effects? This case turned out bigger than any of us could have guessed. Agent Martinez checked in half a year after the last sentencing. Your documentation and Walter's records, they gave us the playbook for rooting out these HOA fraud networks nationwide. 43 communities, 8 states, $60 million in stolen funds traced and returned, 87 convictions. He actually sounded a little proud, and for good reason. And then came the congressional hearings. That's right, our quiet little lane was suddenly the front page story for every lawmaker with an eye on re-election. They hauled Walter up to Washington to testify, Gray Cardigan, and all about how he documented every assessment, every missing receipt, every family forced out under false pretenses. He stood there 80 years old, teaching federal agents and congressmen alike how to spot HOA fraud in a sea of paperwork. Sonny told me one morning I spent 8 years thinking I was fighting one crooked woman. Turns out I was building the case for the biggest suburban fraud prosecution in history. It wasn't just courtrooms and headlines. The Community Transparency and Protection Act got passed. Now, every HOA in the country is required to keep public financial records and undergo annual federal audits. No more secret fines. No more backroom deals. Magnolia's little kingdom became the example for national reform. The neighborhood scholarship fund kept growing too. Visitor fees, donations, and a few kind-hearted alumni meant that by the second year, we were sending 4 kids to college, all from families who'd nearly lost their homes to Magnolia's scams. Walter set up the trust, made sure every penny was accounted for, even after both of us are long gone. Rebecca Morrison moved in next door to Walter, brought her 2 teenage daughters, and helped rewrite the association charter from scratch. The difference she told the crowd at her first meeting is that now we build together. Nobody imposes anything from the top down. And she meant it. Residents ran every committee, safety, landscaping, the annual block party, you name it. People finally had a say. The gates, too. They became a point of pride. State-of-the-art tech emergency overrides for first responders. Digital logs for every entry and exit, all open to resident review. No more hiding. Guests would sometimes laugh about the $5 visitor fee, but most paid it with a smile, knowing exactly where it went. Some even asked if they could donate extra. Transparency Hall, built from the bones of Magnolia's foreclosed mansion, turned into a hub for learning. The sheriff's department sent officers there to take classes on HOA fraud. Real estate students came for seminars. The first Thursday of every month, you'd find old-timers and new families alike poring over ledgers and minutes, not because they had to, but because it felt good to know the truth. Magnolia, meanwhile, kept herself busy behind bars. The warden wrote Agent Martinez a letter, said she'd filed more than 60 complaints about inefficiencies and unacceptable recreational standards. She started her own prison newsletter, even submitted a proposal to manage commissary inventory for the greater good. Last anyone heard, she was trying to organize correctional standards committees and run best practices for cell cleanliness. Some people just can't help themselves, right? Funny thing is, folks still tell Magnolia stories at every block party, but now they're just that, stories. Walter will hoist a beer point to the plaque at the end of the road and say, "To Meadowbrook Private Drive, established 1967, recovered 2024. Proof that truth beats fraud. Documentation beats intimidation, and sometimes the little guy wins." Laughter follows every time. A year after the verdict, we celebrated with a barbecue that felt like a real homecoming. There were ribs and potato salad, cornhole and card tables, lemonade stands run by kids who'd never even known the fear of a surprise assessment letter. We raised enough for a new playground in a single afternoon. That night, when the sun was setting and the last embers were dying in the fire pit, Walter and I just sat in lawn chairs at the curb. You know, he said if someone told me a moving truck would save this place, I'd have called them crazy. I just laughed. You and me both. There's a moral here if you're listening. Real authority isn't taken. It's earned through honesty and proof. You can hide behind fake documents and empty threats for a while, but if you push hard enough, eventually the right person shows up with the right skills. And when that happens, the whole house of cards falls down, sometimes fast, sometimes one slow box at a time. And Magnolia. Well, every morning her old board members drive across my road past that plaque, maybe remembering the days when fear worked better than truth. Maybe wishing they'd been on the right side of things. Maybe not. Doesn't really matter now. These days, Meadowbrook Lane is just a place where folks live, work, play, and watch out for each other. I still get the occasional letter from Magnolia, and I always read them with a grin. They remind me how far we've come and how close we came to losing it all. So, if you ever find yourself up against impossible odds, if you're staring down a bully who thinks they own the rules, just remember, documentation matters, neighbors matter, and sometimes the quiet guy with a moving truck has more power than anyone suspects. And if you're ever driving through our neighborhood, you'll see that bronze sign shining in the sun. Proof that the good guys can win that truth does matter, and that nobody gets to run a community by fear for long. That's the lesson Magnolia never learned, but the rest of us, we won't ever forget.